At my son's burial, his wife ejected me from the house. I am Thomas Mitchell. What unfolded next altered everything. Imagine this. Your child is gone. You are mourning, and your daughter-in-law stares at you and declares, "Quit crying! Gather your things and leave my home this instant." She labeled me a useless burden before all the funeral guests. But here is what Victoria did not realize. The home she was ordering me from, I constructed it in 1987. The funds she believed she inherited, $850,000, that was always mine. For 8 years, she existed on my kindness while regarding me as a charity case. I did not argue. I simply left. Occasionally, silence is the strongest reply. If you are new, please subscribe. I tell tales about confronting disrespect. Believe me, you will wish to know the conclusion, because what Victoria learned 72 hours later showed us both that assumptions can cost you all. Let me begin at the start. The indicators were present early. I simply overlooked them. When my son David died in that crash 2 months prior, Victoria instantly assumed control. "Don't fret over the plans, Tom," she said. "I'll manage it all." What she truly meant was, remain out of my path. At the funeral home, she made each choice, the casket, flowers, even the music. When I proposed David's favorite song, the one we used to play while building this house in 1987, she interrupted. "That's too mournful," Victoria stated. "We need something brighter." I observed her commanding the room in her $300 black dress, directing everyone like a stage director. And me? I sat in my old gray suit, the one worn to my wife's funeral 2 years before, feeling unseen. The second sign emerged at the reception in our house. My house, technically, though Victoria had acted as if it were hers since David's death. She drew me aside in the kitchen. "Tom, we must discuss your situation." "My situation?" "You are financially reliant on us now. David supported you, and with him gone," she shrugged, "I cannot carry that load." Burden. That word struck deeper than anticipated. "I've been exceedingly generous allowing you to remain," she continued, "but this home is mine now. Everything is mine. David left it all to me." I nodded slowly. Victoria mistook that nod for surrender. What she missed was calculation. She had no clue David never owned this house. He lived here, yes, grew up here, certainly, but owned it? Never. She also knew nothing of the basement filing cabinet, 4 drawers of meticulously ordered financial records spanning 40 years. The CPA in me never discarded anything. Most crucially, she was unaware of the trust. But I'm getting ahead. The funeral guests witnessed what Victoria wished them to see. A successful realtor taking charge during a crisis, and an elderly man who could not manage his affairs. They watched her accept condolences as the new family head. Meanwhile, I sat quietly in David's old recliner, the one I bought for his 16th birthday, and listened as she portrayed me as the dependent father-in-law. "Tom is struggling to adjust," I heard her tell our neighbor Helen Davis. "The poor man doesn't grasp finances. David handled everything for him." Helen gave me a sympathetic glance. She had known me for 37 years, since I broke ground on this lot. Yet even she seemed to accept Victoria's narrative. That is when I understood something vital. People see what they anticipate. Victoria expected a grieving father who could not cope alone. So that is what she saw. The old Honda Civic I drove, my simple clothes, my quiet grief. She mistook humility for helplessness, silence for weakness, generosity for desperation. An understandable error. Since my wife Margaret's death 2 years ago, I had lived simply. David comprehended that. He respected my choice to downsize. But Victoria measured worth by appearances, by volume, by who controlled the conversation. She was about to learn that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who need not prove anything. As the last guests left that Tuesday evening, Victoria cornered me by the front door. "I meant what I said, Tom. This arrangement no longer works." I gazed around the living room I had painted 3 times over the decades, the hardwood floors I installed by hand, the crown molding I measured and cut with David when he was 12. "I understand," I said quietly. But Victoria had no idea what I understood, and she certainly had no notion of what followed. Wednesday morning brought equal measures of clarity and coffee. I sat at my kitchen table, the one Margaret and I bought at a garage sale in 1986, and made a list. Not of what I was losing, but of what Victoria assumed she was gaining. The house, 2,400 square feet of memories on Maple Street. Current market value, per Victoria's own real estate expertise, $420,000. The life insurance, David's policy through his engineering firm, $150,000. Victoria had already begun spending that money in her mind. The furniture, everything from Margaret's antique china cabinet to David's engineering textbooks, not valuable to others, but priceless to me. My dignity, as Victoria paraded about as if she had inherited a kingdom when she had inherited nothing. Yet here's what truly troubled me. It was not the money or even the house. It was the erasure. Victoria was methodically removing every trace of the life Margaret and I had built. She had already boxed Margaret's photos from the mantel. David's childhood drawings vanished from the refrigerator. Even my old CPA certificates had disappeared from the den wall. "I am redecorating," she explained when I inquired about the photos. "David always said this place needed updating." Updating? As if 40 years of memories were outdated software. She gave me 30 days. 30 days to find elsewhere to live on what she presumed was Social Security and nothing more. 30 days to pack 4 decades and pretend it never happened. The cruelest part, she did it all with such confidence, such certainty that she held every card. Tuesday afternoon, she had handed me a printed timeline, actually printed it, as if I were a tenant being evicted. "November 15th, she said, pointing to the date circled in red. "That allows you time to find a nice senior community more suited to your situation." Your situation. That phrase again. "I have already researched some places," she continued, producing brochures like a favor. "Sunset Manor has openings. It is only $800 monthly for a studio." $800 a month. She expected me to spend my entire Social Security on rent and somehow survive on nothing else. "What about food?" I asked. "Transportation? Medical bills?" She shrugged. "There are programs for people in your situation. Food stamps, Medicaid. The government cares for seniors." The government, as if I were some charity case who had never contributed to society. That is when I realized Victoria did not merely want me gone. She wanted me grateful for the chance to leave. She wanted me to thank her for 30 days instead of 0, to appreciate her generosity and not calling the police immediately, to accept this as simply how things were now that David was gone. But Wednesday morning, with my coffee and my list, I had a different realization. Victoria had made one critical assumption, that David owned everything she claimed. She had been married to him for 8 years, lived in this house for 8 years. She likely never saw a deed, a mortgage statement, any proof of ownership. Why would she? David handled finances, as his mother and I had taught him. The man tends to the money. Old-fashioned, perhaps, but it worked for us. Except David never actually handled my finances. He assisted around the house, brought groceries, drove me to appointments after Margaret died. But the money, investments, property, that was always mine to manage. Victoria saw David's helpfulness and assumed dependency. She saw my gratitude and assumed obligation. She saw 2 years of quiet grief and assumed defeat. If I said nothing, if I simply packed and shuffled off to Sunset Manor like a good little senior, what message would that send? That bullies win, that volume beats truth, that if you are loud and confident enough, you can rewrite history and steal a life, that respect is optional with the elderly, that my 40 years with Margaret meant nothing, that the home we built was just bricks and wood, that the son we raised could be forgotten as easily as photos removed from a mantle. The stakes were not just financial, they were existential. But I possessed something Victoria knew nothing about, something that would change everything. I merely needed the right moment to use it. And that moment arrived sooner than she thought. Thursday morning, Victoria let herself into my house with David's key. I was breakfasting when the front door opened, no knock, no greeting. She marched in as if she owned the place, which, in her mind, she did. "Tom, we must talk," she announced, entering the kitchen with a manila folder. "About what?" "Your finances." She sat, uninvited. "I have been considering your situation, and I need to understand exactly what David was covering for you." I sipped my coffee. "Such as?" "The utilities, property taxes, insurance." She opened her folder, revealing a legal pad of handwritten notes. "David never specified amounts, but I must know to budget properly." "Budget for what?" "For taking over those payments, obviously." She looked at me as if I were slow. "Until you move, I will have to cover everything David covered for you." I set down my cup. "And what exactly do you believe David was covering?" "Everything. The mortgage, taxes, electric. You are on a fixed income, Tom." "Social Security does not stretch that far." "Is that what David told you?" Victoria's pen halted. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did David specifically say he was paying my bills?" "He did not need to. It is obvious." She gestured around the kitchen. "How else could you afford this? This house is worth over $400,000. "And how do you know it's worth?" "I am a realtor, Tom. I know property values here." "But you have never seen the deed." The question lingered. Victoria's confidence flickered momentarily. "I do not need to see the deed. David inherited this when your wife died." "Did he?" "Of course. Who else would get it?" I stood slowly, walked to the sink, rinsed my cup deliberately. "You know, Victoria, you have made many assumptions about my finances. They are not assumptions, they are facts." "Really? What other facts do you have?" She consulted her pad. "David said you never contributed a dime to this house." I turned. "David told you that?" "Yes." "Interesting. Because I built this house in 1987, paid cash for the lot, hired contractors, supervised every day of construction." Victoria's face tightened. "That was 37 years ago.
things change.
Some things, not ownership.
Look, Tom, I know this is hard. Losing David, facing reality about your finances, but denial will not help.
What denial?
Pretending you are not dependent on family charity.
The word charity landed like a slap. I dried my hands slowly. Victoria, let me ask you. In 8 years of marriage, did David ever show you a mortgage statement?
We kept finances separate.
Did he ever mention house payments?
We did not discuss every expense.
Did you ever see him write a check for property taxes? Her silence answered. Here is what I think happened, I said, leaning against the counter. David helped around the house, picked up groceries, did yard work, and you assumed that meant he supported me financially, because that is how it appeared.
Appearances deceive.
Victoria stood frustrated.
Fine. Show me the deed. Prove you own this.
I do not have to prove anything to you.
Yes, you do, because I am David's widow and I inherited everything.
Did you?
Stop answering questions with questions.
Stop making assumptions. We stared across the kitchen. Victoria's jaw was tight, her composure cracking.
You have until November 15th,
she said finally.
After that, I changed the locks.
We shall see about that. She gathered her papers.
We shall see about what?
But I merely smiled and began loading the dishwasher. Some conversations are better finished with lawyers present. Friday afternoon, I did something I had not done in months. I went to the basement. It had always been my sanctuary. Margaret joked I was like a squirrel there, storing every document like winter acorns. You never know when you will need proof, I would say. She would roll her eyes, reminding me normal people do not keep 40 years of bank statements. But I was not normal. I was a CPA who learned early that paper trails tell stories, and stories protect you when memories fail or people lie. The filing cabinet stood where I had left it, 4 drawers meticulously organized, each labeled by decade, each folder by category, each document chronological. Beautiful in its own way. I pulled the bottom drawer first. 1980s, the decade that changed everything. Inside I found the folder. Real estate, 447 Maple Street. Yes, 447. The number Victoria thought she now owned. The first document. Original land purchase, March 12, 1987. Thomas Mitchell, buyer. $43,000 for the lot. Second, construction contract, Mitchell and Sons Building Company, no relation. $78,000 for a custom colonial. Third, the most important. Original deed recorded March 15, 1987. Owner, Thomas Mitchell. No cosigner, no joint ownership, no mortgage. I had paid cash for everything. Victoria had no idea. She was 4 years old in 1987, learning to tie shoes while I learned blueprints. But there was more. Insurance policies, property tax receipts, utility agreements, all in my name, paid by me, proving continuous ownership for 37 years. David's name appeared nowhere. The 1990s drawer, same story. Property taxes paid by Thomas Mitchell, insurance premiums by Thomas Mitchell, even landscaping receipts in my name. The 2000s, 2010s, and the most recent 2024 file all repeated it. But the real surprise was in the very back, a folder labeled Trust Documents, Private. This held papers that would change everything. documents telling a story she could not imagine. First, a trust agreement dated June 15, 1985, before David was born. The Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust. Second, a bank statement from First National Bank of Ohio. Balance as of October 31, 2024, $853,412. Third, a list of trust beneficiaries. David's name was there, not as inheritor, but as a lifetime beneficiary with specific terms Victoria never asked about. The trust was complex, as these things are, but the structure was simple. Margaret and I were original trustees. After Margaret's death, I became sole trustee. David received monthly allowances for education, housing, family support. But ownership always remained with the trust, with me. David lived comfortably because I insured it. His engineering degree, wedding, investments, all flowed from this trust, all under my control. Victoria saw David's comfortable life and assumed independent wealth. She saw his generosity toward me and assumed it came from his earnings. She never imagined the money flowing from David to me was actually my money flowing back. Funny how assumptions work. You see what fits expectations and ignore what does not. Victoria expected successful young couples to support aging parents. So when she saw David helping, she assumed dependency. She never considered I was helping him. But there was one more document. David's life insurance policy. $150,000, as Victoria said. But the beneficiary was not Victoria. It was the Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust. Me. Victoria had been spending money never hers, planning with resources belonging to another, building a future on a non-existent foundation. I closed the cabinet and returned upstairs. In the kitchen, I made a sandwich and considered timing. Victoria had given me until November 15 to move. Today was November 1st. 2 weeks to decide. I could call her now, explain, show the documents, watch her world collapse in real time. Or I could wait. Let her keep assuming. Let her dig deeper. Let her learn the hard way. As I ate, I recalled my old business partners saying, "Tom, sometimes the best negotiation is letting the other guy talk himself into a corner." Victoria was definitely talking herself into a corner. The question was how deep to let her dig before stopping her. I looked around the kitchen I designed 37 years ago. My cabinets, my countertops, my windows, my house, my trust, my choice. Victoria was about to learn respect is not negotiable. But first, she needed to finish digging. Sunday morning brought the worst of Victoria. I was preparing for church when she arrived with 3 realtor friends for a consultation on the house's potential. I heard them before seeing them. Victoria's voice through the door. "This place has incredible bones, but the decor is so outdated. Classic old person style." They walked through my house as if it were already theirs. "Oh, Victoria, this crown molding is gorgeous," said a blonde in expensive boots. "Original, from 1987, Victoria replied. "Tom built this, but he has no eye for modern design. Look at this wallpaper, that furniture. It is like a museum." I stood atop the stairs, listening to them catalog my life's work like a garage sale. "The bones are there," said another, "but you will need to gut the kitchen. Those cabinets are so 80s. "Already planning it," Victoria said. "Tom is moving to a senior community soon,
so I will have full control over renovations.
Full control over my kitchen, the one Margaret and I planned for 6 months. I came down in my church clothes. 3 strangers stood in my living room taking photos.
Tom,
Victoria's voice artificially bright.
perfect timing. Meet some colleagues.
She introduced me like a curiosity.
This is Tom, David's father, the original owner, but he is transitioning to a more suitable living situation.
Transitioning, as if a job change.
Mr. Mitchell,
said the blonde,
your house has such character. You must have put much work into it.
Some, I said.
Victoria tells us you are moving to Sunset Manor. That is a nice facility.
I looked at Victoria. Is that what I'm doing?
We discussed this, Tom. November 15th, remember?
I remember you discussing it. Uncomfortable silence. The agents exchanged glances.
Well, said the blonde, we should let you get to church.
Actually, Victoria said, Tom, while everyone is here, perhaps you could tell them about maintenance issues.
The roof leak, furnace problems.
There was no leak. The furnace was 2 years old.
I am unaware of any issues,
I said carefully.
Tom, you know the upstairs faucet drips. The basement gets damp in spring.
The faucet needed a 50-cent washer. The basement had been dry 20 years. Victoria's smile tightened.
Tom is very attached. Sometimes he misses problems obvious to others.
Problems like what? I asked.
Like the fact you cannot afford to maintain a house this size anymore?
The room quieted. Even the agents looked uncomfortable.
Cannot afford it?
I asked.
Tom, we have been through this. Your Social Security barely covers basic expenses.
And you know this how?
Because I am not blind. You drive a 15-year-old Honda. You shop with coupons. You have not updated anything here since the Clinton administration.
An agent cleared her throat.
Maybe we should reschedule. No, it is fine, Victoria said. Tom understands. He has had 2 years to adjust to reality since Margaret died.
What reality is that? I asked. That you are a 70-year-old man on a fixed income who cannot handle a 2,400-square-foot house anymore?
70. 68, whatever. The point is you are making assumptions about my finances. They are not assumptions, Tom. They are observations. Observations about what?
About the fact that you have been living off David's generosity for 2 years, and now he is gone, you need to face reality. The words hung like tear gas. The agents sought exits.
David's generosity, I repeated.
Yes. David paid your property taxes. David covered utilities. David ensured you had groceries and medical care.
Did he?
You know he did.
And you know this because?
Because I was married to him. I saw him writing checks